This week on Comic History, Agent Venom faces off with original Venom host Eddie Brock as Anti-Venom in the epic Spider Island event. What's up guys, Roman from RNS Entertainment here with yet another episode of Comic History, the series where we go over the iconic origins and storylines in the world of comics. This week it's symbiote versus pseudo-symbiote, as former Spider-Man bully turned war hero Flash Thompson, aka Agent Venom, is assigned to track down and subdue original Venom host Eddie Brock, who after being cured of his cancer had become Anti-Venom. For information on both of these characters, make sure to check out my Origin of Agent Venom and Origin of Anti-Venom episodes of Comic History. This fight between Venom hosts occurs during the incredibly fun 2011 Spider-Man event Spider Island, in which Spider-Man/Captain America villain Adriana Soria, aka the Spider Queen, along with help from Miles Warren, aka the Jackal, infects all of Manhattan with a virulent plague that first gives the people of New York Spider-Man's powers, but later turns them into giant spider creatures that the Queen can control. I may do a larger video or series of videos on the entire Spider Island event in the future, and if you'd like to see that, give this video a thumbs up and let me know in the comment section below. Our story begins in the midst of the outbreak, with a large portion of Manhattan's population having gained the powers of Spider-Man, and the best scientists available, including Peter Parker's employers Horizon Labs and Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four, working desperately for a cure. Hordes of now superpowered people have begun to riot, steal, fight, and generally cause chaos, with most of the superheroes tied up in quelling the violence and keeping the infected citizens quarantined inside the city. The Spider Queen has also sent her main enforcer, a giant mutated spider creature she's named the Spider King, into New York, where he mercilessly beats minor superhero Gravity into the ground. Project Rebirth deploys Agent Venom to defeat the Spider King and somehow bring the creature back alive so that they can study it and find some answers as to what the hell is going on. As he's being given his mission, Flash is contacted by his girlfriend Betty Brant, who is with Flash's father in a hospital that is in the midst of being evacuated. But as Flash's father is dying of liver failure due to his long years of alcoholism, he's deemed by doctors unable to survive the move and is nearing his last moments. Flash's father weakly calls out for his son, and Betty begs Flash to be there for this moment as he suits up as Agent Venom to go after Spider King. Agent Venom becomes entangled in a brawl with the Spider King, and in his head, Flash is a complete wreck, almost losing control over the symbiote, trying to control its murderous thoughts as he blames his father for choosing the worst moment to die, thinking that he didn't even want this job anymore, saying that this would be his last mission as Agent Venom, and eventually he uses Gravity's powers to subdue Spider King, returning him to Project Rebirth. Spider King is locked in a containment cell at Project Rebirth, and before they can run any useful tests, he begins to spew out millions of tiny virus-spreading spiders, revealing that the Spider Queen had sent him as a Trojan horse to spread the virus outside of the quarantine. Spider King bursts out of the containment cell and the spiders quickly fill the room, with Flash panicking and realizing that the symbiote is on the other side of these creatures. And unable to reach it, him and the Project Rebirth staff flee with the rampaging Spider King chasing right behind them. Flash decides that their only course of action is to activate the kill switch in Project Rebirth, which will decimate the entire facility with a mix of sonics and napalm, killing all of them but stopping the plague from spreading further. They try to fight their way to the switch, but Spider King throws Flash onto the ground and prepares to kill him while he crawls away helplessly. Suddenly, the Venom symbiote, who had been freed in the chaos and had attached itself to General Dodge's Seeing Eye Dog, attacks Spider King to protect Flash, and once again rejoins with him, with Venom fighting Spider King back to the napalm switch, while Project Rebirth scientists desperately analyzes Spider King's blood to find that Spider King is actually Captain America, who had been captured, mutated, and controlled by the Queen. Agent Venom thinks of options, and he hits the kill switch while knocking a wall down on top of himself to possibly provide cover, all while thinking to himself that suddenly he wants to talk to his dad and to say goodbye. Agent Venom manages to survive the explosion, and the Spider King is completely subdued, with Project Rebirth assigning Flash to disguise himself as Spider King and find whoever did this to Captain America, and on their orders to snap their neck. At the hospital, Betty calls Flash's phone, reaching only his voicemail, and to herself begging Flash to make it in time. Meanwhile, Eddie Brock, aka Anti-Venom, uses the power of his restorative symbiote to cure the people of New York, wiping the spider virus out of their systems entirely. But because at this point all the virus has done is give them Spider-Man's powers, they do not want the cure, and even try to fight him off as he tries to help them. In another place, Adriana Soria, the Spider Queen, uses her abilities to advance the plague to stage 2, causing everyone who has been infected long enough to mutate and change into horrific giant spider creatures, all of whom are immediately under her complete control. With the infection having gone from chaotic to horrifying, Eddie Brock takes sanctuary at Our Lady of Saints Church, the same church where he became Venom for the first time. New Yorkers still in the transitional stage of the disease flock to the church, seeking out Anti-Venom and the healing his symbiote can provide, and Eddie takes this as a sign that it all means something, and that he will cure all of the afflicted people in Spider Island. At the Spider Queen's lair, a still disguised Agent Venom considers making his move and killing the Queen, when one of Miles Warren's mini clones of himself reports in saying that Eddie Brock is curing people in the city, with Flash offering to go take care of him for her. Flash contacts Project Rebirth and tells them about Anti-Venom, with them immediately contacting Reed Richards and informing him that there's a cure. People continue to flock to Eddie's church, begging him for a cure for them and their family members, and he tells them that the light of God will cleanse the spider's curse, with the congregation beginning to claim that Anti-Venom is the chosen one who will lead them through this. Agent Venom approaches the church, talking to Betty again about his father and once again deciding to leave him to die, and finds Anti-Venom weakened temporarily from healing so many people. Agent Venom disguises himself and enters the congregation, with the symbiote reacting to seeing its former host, with the pain and hurt of being jilted and given away turning to anger and hate, as it had with Spider-Man so many years before. Eddie preaches to the crowd, telling them that he had been granting absolution for his sins, and thus all of them could be redeemed, as the Venom symbiote's thoughts begin to fill Flash's mind, repeating that Eddie had abandoned and betrayed them as Flash raises his gun. Anti-Venom notices and grabs Venom in mid-speech, yelling that how dare Venom come to this place, that he won't be pulled back down from the light, and Venom says that Eddie belongs in the dark, hitting him through the stained glass window of the church. Outside, Anti-Venom tells Venom that the symbiote is drinking his soul, and that it will leave him an empty husk, beginning to dissolve the Venom symbiote as he tells Flash that he's an addict, a damaged animal, that he has a sickness, and Anti-Venom is the cure. The Venom symbiote shrieks in pain and Flash yells to get off of them, hurling Eddie back as he tells Flash that he only thinks he's making choices of free will, that everything Flash has done has been the symbiote's decision. Flash yells at him to shut up, but Eddie continues, saying that he knows Flash has been changed by the symbiote, counting the hours until he joins with it again, and Flash weakly tries to argue, feeling the truth in what Eddie is saying. Anti-Venom asks Flash if he's been killing, if he's been enjoying killing and lying and cheating, and at each word Flash thinks back to his actions throughout his time as Venom, each time lining up with what Eddie is telling him. Anti-Venom prepares to end the fight and Flash realizes that he's right, the symbiote is a drug, a poison, and screams to get off of him as he ejects the Venom symbiote onto Eddie and severs their bond. Eddie screams out, "No, not again," as the Venom symbiote covers him, with his Anti-Venom symbiote too weakened from curing people to defend him. Flash says good riddance to the Venom symbiote, but then realizes that if Eddie's antibodies are wiped out, it will destroy the city's only chance for a cure, with the symbiote and Eddie finally rejoining again, claiming that it is sweet symbiosis once again. Flash begs the symbiote to come back to him, saying that Eddie will always fight him, that Flash needs it, while thinking in his head that he doesn't even want it, but that everyone was counting on him. The Venom symbiote thinks for a moment, and then rejoins with Flash, leaving Eddie passed out with the Anti-Venom symbiote writhing around him. Reed Richards finds Anti-Venom webbed up outside of his facility and says that it looks like the good guys got him, and Eddie cuts his way free and says that he's happy to help, and that Venom was no good guy, that he never even said what he wanted, just showed up at the church and tried to kill him. After this soul-crushing confrontation, Flash finally goes to the hospital to see his dying father, holding his hand and making what peace he could as his dad passes away. Eddie prepares for Horizon and Reed Richards to make the cure, being told beforehand that it would require all of the antibodies in the suit, and that Eddie would never be able to become Anti-Venom again. Eddie says that it's a sacrifice he's proud to make, telling them to take from him so that others can be spared. At the hospital, Betty gives Flash a letter his father had her write down in case he never showed up, which apologized for all of his wrongdoings and the effects they had on Flash. Flash takes it and receives orders to kill the Spider Queen and end this, and he tells Betty that he's going to find them a way out of this, giving her a gun and once again leaving her in the hospital. Flash attacks the Spider Queen at her lair in Central Park and is easily overpowered by her variety of superpowers and sonic attacks, getting blasted out of the symbiote and losing the letter to his father in a fire. Captain America is healed from the Anti-Venom and joins with Flash to fight the Queen, and while he has her distracted, Agent Venom buries Captain America's dropped shield in Adriana Soria's back, killing her as Rogers tells him that he did what he had to do. Suddenly, the body of Adriana writhes and grows, and her spider powers reawaken her in a gigantic spider body, as big as a skyscraper, that storms into the city, destroying everything and feeding off of the infected populace for more power. Meanwhile, Spider-Man and Mary Jane fight their way through the city to a Horizon Labs facility housing the weaponry of all of his villains, taking control of Dr. Octopus's millions of Octobots using a mental control helmet, sending them to Reed Richards, who says that although they have enough of the Anti-Venom for everyone in the city, they have no way to distribute it. Spider-Man has the Octobots fill themselves with the cure, and while all of the superheroes of New York desperately try to stop the Spider-Queen, him and Mary Jane use the antenna on the top of the Empire State Building to amplify his control to mentally manipulate each one of the millions of robots to inject all of the infected citizens of New York with the Anti-Venom, smiling as he realizes that he's going to do it, so embroiled in saving the city that he doesn't even hear Mary Jane telling him she still loves him. The Spider-Queen is weakened by the sudden loss of thousands of her followers, and with help from Kane, Spider-Man's failed clone who was resurrected at the beginning of Spider Island, Spider-Queen is struck down and killed once and for all. In the aftermath of Spider Island, all of New York wakes up naked in various places, not remembering anything after having spider powers, and Eddie Brock is hailed as the hero of Spider Island, being credited publicly by Reed Richards for his sacrifice to save the city. Flash, meanwhile, continues to operate as Venom, chasing down a criminal named the Hijacker who had been using a gigantic mechanical tank to rob banks in the chaos and fallout of the infection. And Flash witnesses Hijacker run over a mother and child in the streets, and the sight of their corpses causes Flash to lose it, becoming a monstrous Venom and confronting Hijacker at his hideout, slashing his stomach open and shattering both of his hands, and then cracking Hijacker's face against the tread of his tank. Venom says, "Beg us," and Hijacker pleads for his life, with Venom biting his head clean off, spitting it onto the floor and saying that it was a small justice that he died in terror. He returns to Betty, who had remained safe locked in a closet in the hospital, and she holds him as he thinks of how to tell her of the monster he had become. He tells her that he lost his father's letter, and she says that the one she gave him was a cleaned up version of the original, reading his father's last words aloud to Flash as he rests his head on her lap. And that is where today's episode wraps up. Spider Island was a really fun event that spanned multiple issues of the Amazing Spider-Man book, issues 6 through 9 of the 2011 Agent Venom solo series, and a number of tie-ins. The conflict between Flash Thompson as the then current Venom and Eddie Brock, the original Venom, as Anti-Venom was epic. For me, it was a hallmark moment and exemplifies what makes good symbiote stories great. Flash's character development and conflict with the symbiote and his own dark urges it brings out throughout this series is astounding, and cemented Flash as one of the best Venoms of all time. Eddie Brock, who if you're new to my channel is my favorite Marvel characterization is also perfect here, and although his time as Anti-Venom was awesome and it was sad to see that come to an end, it serviced the story perfectly and opened the door for some great stuff with him as Toxin in the future. If you're interested in these characters and want to see more, I have done a ton of these videos on symbiote and Spider-Man stories. If you want to know more about Flash Thompson as Agent Venom, I'm covering his entire series, which starts with my origin of Agent Venom, then continues with Agent Venom vs. Kraven the Hunter, Agent Venom vs. Spider-Man, and Venom Father's Day, which wraps up the first volume. And after this video, we will continue with Venom Circle of 4, the epic next storyline where Flash goes rogue with the symbiote and teams up with Red Hulk, Ghost Rider, and X-23 to stop the forces of hell. If you want more Eddie Brock or Anti-Venom, you can check out my Origin of Venom video, which covers the origin of the Venom symbiote and the first time it joined with Eddie to create Venom, Venom vs. Spider-Man Round 2, which covered the second time Venom fights with Spider-Man, the origin of Anti-Venom, Anti-Venom vs. the Punisher, Toxin Reborn, which covers Eddie Brock becoming Toxin when he bonds with the symbiote Son of Carnage, and tons of other symbiote stories like the origin of Carnage, the origin of Toxin, the origin of Mania, Deadpool vs. Carnage, Toxin vs. Carnage, and more. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know if you'd like to see more of Spider Island or anything else you want to see in future episodes. Subscribe to my channel and follow me on Twitter at Roman_RNS for updates and more. Thanks for watching, comic fans, and happy 2017. And happy